Hey and welcome, I'm Hammeh and an Overwatch Lore overload of interesting pieces of info for you today. Michael Chu, lead writer on Overwatch, took to Reddit yesterday for an Ask Me Anything or A.M.A. Lots of interesting background on how the Overwatch story is being shaped and created and could be shaped in future, as well as some little interesting nuggets of information. I've rounded it all up for you here. It's in 3 sections. The first is Overwatch Lore and Story Framework, how the universe is shaping and may shape in future. I put that first because it puts the other answers given into some context. The second is specifics, questions like, is the family Reaper looks at in reflection significant, for example, that kind of question. And the third is funny stuff, including jetpack cat theories. Timecodes are in the description below if you want to skip. Okay, let's get stuck in. To start with, Mr. Chu shared some interesting perspectives on creating Overwatch story, including how long certain things take to create and what challenges the team have currently. In a question I asked about how long things take, Chu said that the hardest part right now was keeping up with the appetite for more story in the Overwatch universe. Given that there's so much positive curiosity and interest and engagement with the heroes and their backstory, the team can understand when it's a little frustrating for us to wait on occasion. As an example of this, Chu then went on to mention that a comic can actually take quite a bit of time from start to finish, with an idea being hammered out over a couple of weeks, then a script could take perhaps another month or so. Then it goes to artists, where there's some time where obviously that's being worked up and revisions are done with them, which can vary depending on a lot of factors how exactly long that takes. So if just quote unquote making a 12-page comic can take a few months, and we already know the timeline for creating animated shorts can be pretty long, 3 to 6 months from various panels, then that gives some idea of the work that goes into what, well, for a comic anyway, we might see as a simple piece of lore. Now, a lot of people, myself included, obviously are very hungry for more story, and sometimes we can get a little impatient at the speed at which we get it. The fact that the team are working on a lot of things, let's say, outside of story, or that also include story or writing, like Uprising's voice lines, for example, would have taken a chunk of work, means there's only so much resource to go around. I'm sure that as Overwatch grows, maybe there'll be more in future, but also remember that Blizzard games or brands and universes that do well tend to stick around for a fair few years, 15 in some cases. Look at Diablo, look at World of Warcraft, as I like saying pretty often, as well as StarCraft. So Overwatch is doing pretty well. We're a year in nearly, with the anniversary coming up soon, and hopefully there's a lot more of that to go. This kind of ties in nicely to another question that Chu answered on lore not being revealed to the public. When they create any hero map or story, of course there is more backstory around it, but the team want to keep it apparently simple when they're first introduced. They don't want to throw it all out there right away for story's sake, which was an interesting sentence to me. I do get where that comes from. It is, of course, for us fans, exciting to know that there is story written or planned that we don't know about, and of course it's a bit like waiting for Christmas if you know the present is there. But think of managing or telling a story over several years, and it makes a lot more sense. If, as Chu said previously, they are running to stay still almost, keeping up with the appetite for lore as he put it, there's no point sharing everything right away, when perhaps you can develop it further into a better, more interesting state or a cooler way for later. But there was also reassurance from Chu in this same answer. The team are looking to wrap up some big questions without introducing a ton of new story threads, although we might have to wait longer for some of the bigger mysteries as they're only just getting started, which alludes to that longer time frame hopefully Overwatch is going to exist for. I'm sure we all hope for that. Now, we've seen Pharah's presumed father with Ana, Torbjorn and Brigitte both in the same sprays in Uprising, so there are little mysteries that are slowly being solved or teased towards, as we've seen recently. As for the future direction of the lore, Chu answered a question and said that until Uprising, what the team kind of most wanted to explore was Overwatch before it got shut down, giving a sense of what it was like at its greatest powers or in its golden glory days, which with Uprising we kinda got. However, the future points were interesting. Chu himself is most excited about developing and releasing story about some of the heroes who haven't got as much attention, and also, importantly, the Talon organisation. It's good to hear on the heroes with less love. The Mercies, the Lucios, the Zens, the Mays to some degree are still a little bit of a closed book to us. However, Talon is a very, very interesting point. We still need to know why they exist, who's leading them, is it one person or several, how they got a hold of all of this technology, who funds them, why they've recruited Widowmaker, Reaper, why Sombra's working with them. So many questions about Talon. And as at the moment, the kind of big bad, apart from the omnic crisis that we've seen in the Overwatch universe, exploring them would be really, really cool. And also, as people have speculated, it would be really, really fun to see them maybe in an Uprising-style Talon event in the past, for example. That could be a really cool new story event in future. If you want to learn a little bit more about what we do know about Talon currently, my Lore Bite series takes Overwatch lore topics and splits it down into everything we know, both in terms of fact and fiction. So do go have a look at that, linked in the playlist below and also in the description. Okay, next, specific answers to kind of specific questions. One specific question was around Reaper and the family he was watching in Reflections. Now, many of us speculated at the time that perhaps this family had some kind of significance to Reaper. And, as we suspected, Chu confirmed that this family is not a random family. So, begs the question, what is the significance of this family to Reyes? Was he married with children or not? Is this his wife and child? perhaps his wife remarried, or are they just family instead, or something like that? The mystery continues, but it'll be interesting to know what significance these people hold to Reaper. As for Widowmaker fans, another good piece of news for you, and also Reaper fans too. Chu would, without making promises, like to explore Widowmaker and Reaper stories further. He mentioned that when they told her story originally, very similarly with Reaper, it was from a pretty simple perspective, and both could do with some further exploration. That's not a promise, of course, but here's hoping. Amélie Ballet origins, her murder of her husband Gerard, Reyes' descent into becoming Reaper, what happened while Reyes was in Blackwatch, who, as we just mentioned, are the people that Reyes is having a look at in Reflections. So many interesting stories to be told for just those two alone. Do let me know the kind of stories you'd like to see from them in the comments as well. Next up, a quickie: gorillas on the moon. The question about what's happened to the gorillas that killed the scientists in Horizon, the lunar colony that Winston left to come to Earth, and Chu said in response to this that maybe they like it where they are. Gorilla partially colonised moon confirmed? Where do they get the peanut butter and bananas from? The important questions, but that could be a really cool level, as many people, myself included, have really looked forward to, and there's definitely a story there as to how Winston came to Earth as well. As for animated shorts and interactions, well, Chu said that there's a dream to have one for everyone, but of course you can't predict the future. This completely makes sense. Animated shorts are apparently expensive and time-consuming to make. In various BlizzCon panels, if you've kept a track over the last few years, I've covered some of them in my videos, the team have talked about how after the Overwatch intro cinematic, which was quite a big budget affair, they had to make efficiencies to be able to make more of quality cinematics in a shorter period of time. As for interactions, well, there are more incoming. Their rollout is random a little bit based on when Blizzard are able to record and when they can get the actors in to complete the two halves of any pair. So in case you're wondering why I haven't done an Orisa voice lines yet, this has been the case with her since she launched. Now, some parts of her pairs are getting into the game files. I'll do her voice lines as soon as they're all there, so keep an eye out for that in future. I'll let you know when it's coming. Omnic language, Omnicode, as we now know, is not directly translatable into English. The original idea was apparently that it should be animated, so moving symbols, and not something that humans who haven't been augmented should be able to read easily. That puts paid, with Chu's statement perhaps for now, to a few Reddit projects that have been going on for some time trying to translate Omnic using the text in Numbani and other places. It kind of reminds me of the Nepal Sanctum symbols and one of Zenyatta's emotes where the symbols move around, this kind of moving fluid code language. A very cool idea. On the subject of omnics, bad omnics, are we going to see any as heroes? People have been asking for a different moral dimension to omnics. Obviously we've seen Null Sector recently, which was interesting, but there was no one face or figurehead to that movement as we saw. Chu did say that omnics will apparently be fleshed out. Oh my goodness, omnic racism, prejudice in 2017 nonetheless, in a similar manner to humans in future. I think some kind of evil or amoral or perhaps bad omnic hero could be a pretty cool one to have a look at too. Again, on the subject of omnics and the omnic crisis, there was an interesting point about God programs. Now, Chu actually stated that incorrect assumptions have been made about the functionality, the existence, and the timeline of God programs, and that the phrase was a colloquial way to describe functionality of the AI Anubis in mission statement. So, where's all this coming from? As a very quick summary, in Farah's comic mission statement, God AIs are talked about in a bit of detail. We are told that after the omnic crisis, Overwatch quarantined more than one God AI. We also know from a panel where Farah and the team are talking to each other that they have some functionality that can corrupt infrastructure and launch military assaults. Now, myself and other people from this did kind of speculate that maybe there was something to do with the first omnic crisis. There was also follow-on speculation from that maybe Athena was some kind of God AI too. Okay, so if incorrect assumptions about functionality and existence and timeline of them have been made, well, what does that tell us? Does it really tell us anything? Thinking about it, we're never actually specifically told that God AIs were active during the first omnic crisis. We know only that after it, Overwatch quarantined some of them. However, they could still be involved in the first omnic crisis somehow. Their functionality does sound to me still corrupting infrastructure and launching military assaults, like something that happened during the first omnic crisis with the Omniums. That's never been proven that God AIs were directly involved, it was just speculated. Also, of course, for what might be at its very oldest, a 26-year-old plus program, or AI, Anubis still sounds pretty dangerous still, although of course we don't know when Anubis was invented or when it was quarantined by Overwatch. Bear in mind that Overwatch in the timeline was active up until maybe 6, perhaps tops 7 years ago. So it could be 6 or 7 years old, it could be up to 26 years old. Somewhere in that time frame. Now, perhaps God AIs, or these AIs, were a tool still rather than a totally independent agent. And if so, maybe this casts doubt on Athena. Now, Athena perhaps isn't a God AI, whatever it is, if it's a colloquial term, of the same age or time as Anubis, but maybe she's a newer invention, something more, better, more substantial perhaps? In terms of clarifying voice lines and interactions placed in canon again, Chu did go and say that McCree and Reinhardt haven't met Reyes in Overwatch's current day of the universal timeline. So interactions in that case, like Reinhardt saying "traitor" when he sees Reyes, are what ifs. Chu did say though that he thought McCree would recognise Reyes as Reaper pretty quickly if they actually met. I mean, the two were clearly working pretty closely from Uprising. Reyes recruited McCree into Blackwatch, as we know from McCree's biography. Still waiting for that Reyes recruiting McCree into Blackwatch story. An interesting one on timelines. On releasing a basic timeline on whether it would happen, Chu said it could happen at some point, but he did debunk one theory that came up a lot pre-Sombra's release and post the release of Hero, the animated short. I always really disliked this one, but a summary of the theory was Hero was in the past due to there not being enough of the ziggurats visible in the background, the kind of power plant Lumerico style structures, and therefore people trying to theorise off the back of that Hero was way before the present day, and as a result there was enough time for Alejandra to have aged enough to be Sombra as a result. It always felt to me like Hero was set very close to the present day. I mean, look at the flow of Soldier 76's blogs around his release, him going across the USA to Watchpoint Grand Mesa, getting the pulse rifle prototype, and him jumping around the world. Plus, the timeline didn't actually really work from what we do know for Hero to be set really far in the past. Of course, given that it was roughly 6 to 7 years from present day to when Overwatch's Swiss HQ went and Morrison and Reyes were presumed dead, it only gave Alejandra sort of 6 or 7 years to actually age anyway. Hero is actually pretty much meant to be, according to Chu, around Recall in terms of timeline, so it's all very, very current at that time. A couple of interesting points on various inspirations and where they came from for things in Overwatch. Now, Hero dreams of sushi for Hanzo and Genji was cited by Chu as being a bit of an inspiration for Hanzo and Genji and the relationship with their father. Now, I need to watch this film, but having watched the trailer, it's an 85-year-old sushi master and owner of a Michelin-star restaurant in Tokyo in a subway station. His younger son left to set up his own restaurant. His older son, at the age of 50, is still working for his father and hopefully one day will take it over. Now, the director described it as a story about a person living in his father's shadow, the older son, while his father is in a relentless pursuit of perfection. I'm going to have to watch that film and see what parallels we can draw, but it sounds like an interesting one to take a look at. There was also a quick comment on Ghost in the Shell, anime that my wiser half introduced me to and that I love. Chu cited it as an inspiration and said other people in the team probably enjoy it as well, and you can see it very clearly in some places. Take the deaf mute spray for Sombra, which I laughed at as soon as I saw it. In Ghost in the Shell, there is a character called the Laughing Man. He is named after a J.D. Salinger's short story. Also, around the Laughing Man's logo, you can see the sentence, "I thought you know I was one of those deaf mutes." The logo is circled with that sentence. It's actually a quote from J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye, a fairly famous book. If you haven't read it, I would give it a go. And Sombra's spray, that looks similar to the Laughing Man logo in the way that it's plastered over someone's face, is called Deaf Mute. Reference rounded up there. Last but not least, the fun stuff. Well, in terms of foods, Genji's love of ramen clearly comes from Mr. Chu, and apparently Mei also loves beef noodle soup. I like your taste, Mei. I'm a big fan of chili beef ramen myself. Another question as to what the G was in the middle of Trace's pulse bomb. Chu actually checked with Arnold Sang, who said that it was visually meant to be the symbol or look like the hand of a clock rewinding. Pretty cool. Last but not least, Jetpack Cat. So in an interview not too long ago, Jeff mentioned that there was a Jetpack Cat crazy concept in Overwatch's early days, and other people have done videos on it since. Now, Chu did address this and say he wasn't on the team when the original concept happened, but he headcanoned a bit that, as we've seen in Reflections, Torbjorn has a cat. Torbjorn might have stuff lying around, and then he just posted standard disclaimers apply. So, the Jetpack Cat fanfic and fanart train, I hope, is going to set sail. We need more Jetpack Torbjorn Cat fanart in our lives. Anyone? Tweet it to @VelcroftCast. I'd love to see it. So there we go. What were your favourite new facts or speculations from this A.M.A? Where do you think Overwatch story might go in the future? And what heroes or characters would you like to see explored more? Do comment below and let me know your thoughts. Thanks for tuning in, listen to Diva, and
like, follow, subscribe!
And if you enjoyed, do check out the rest of my Overwatch lore, interactions, voice lines and news videos in the playlists below. Big thanks to my patrons on Patreon as always who make my video creation possible, no doubt about it. If you'd like to support my longer lore videos and all of the stuff I spend more time on, please do have a look at my Patreon page for more info. Cheers for tuning in, I've been Hammeh, take it easy and stay classy, Gibraltar.